Hello there and welcome back to the studio today. In today's episode we are going to be painting this portrait. So this is a painting. So the painting that we're going to create is a master study of the artist Solomon Joseph Solomon. There we go, Solomon Joseph Solomon. Actually discovered him on the Google Arts and Culture site. So I will leave a link in the description box down below to the photo reference I used, just because I think, I'm not sure, but I think that this is a lesser known painter. You know, I guess I should say lesser known relative to, who did I paint? Whose portrait? Sargent, yeah. Lesser known than, say, Sargent. And I was stunned when I saw this painting, to be honest. It's incredibly well created. Kind of stuttering today, sorry. So in any case, I'm just trying to block in the top of the hair with simple straight lines and angles, and this tends to be kind of the the rhythm that I've been moving in these days. Now I don't know too much about the artist Solomon Joseph Solomon. So if you have some historical information on this artist in particular, feel free to comment down below. So right now I'm just trying to figure out, I may or may not have to crop the hair up there, so I'm kind of trying to figure that out at the moment. So this is the top of the hairline, this is the bottom of the chin. So if you're drawing or painting along with me, and you would like to share, images of your artwork with us, please feel free to share with me on my Facebook account or my Instagram, whichever. Now I'm going to take the drawing stage rather slow. I'm much more focused right now in the composition and the placement of the head. And if you would like to know exactly what materials I'm using, the color palette and all of that, that information will be typed up in the description box down below. So you can feel free to scroll down there. And we'll also have the affiliated Amazon links. Alright, so what I think I'm going to do, just so that the head doesn't get too, I don't want the head to get too small. I'm gonna lock down the chin here, and we're gonna have a little bit of the collar showing over here. The head's a little closer to the right. I think that's gonna be okay. Just so I don't crop the hair. I really like the way the hair fits into the whole composition here. So I will be cropping a little more down here. So one thing I forgot to mention when we started this episode, what Lucy and I are going to be doing. So if you're interested in purchasing these paintings, I am now going to have 48-hour sales of each painting that you see featured here. So for instance, this painting that we are creating here is going to be on sale on my website at 40% off of the usual price of a original oil painting at the 11 by 14 inch size. So if you are interested in starting your own collection of these paintings, or you're interested in purchasing your first Yupari artist painting, I would say the best time to do it is now. If you're watching this video when it was first uploaded, again, 48 hours, it'll be 40% off for the first 48 hours on my website. So if you just go to the website, there is an Etsy account. If you're familiar with Etsy, Etsy is a kind of a platform that simplifies the sales of paintings and things like that. I will say you must be the first to reserve this painting. So it has to be first come, first serve since there's only going to be one of these paintings. And I'm going to do that with the rest of the videos following this one. Or we're going to do our best to do that. Okay then, so what do we have here? Just a basic composition. The idea is to keep things rather simple using straight lines and angles. And the thing that really caught me with this painting is the simplicity of everything, yet the, I don't know how to describe the way that everything is simplified on the original painting. I really enjoy. It's very similar to a Sargent, but with I think a little more, I don't know how to say, I think with sharper edges. But we'll get into these shapes, don't worry. So right now the outside shape of the face is something that's kind of important. So with another brush with a little bit of odorless mineral spirits, I'm going to erase a little bit over here. I really want to lock in the bottom of the chin. So over here. Alright, so now I've locked in the bottom of the chin. Don't quite have the shape of it just yet, but that's okay. Now remember, this is a master study, okay? A master study and not a master copy. So this is a learning exercise where we are observing a painting created by someone in the past. We're learning from this painting, but we are not trying to duplicate this painting. We're not trying to make a copy of this painting. We're trying to use the fundamentals of painting and drawing to create our own works of art, but at the same time learning from those from the past, okay? So this will not look like a perfect replica of the painting. You know, this will have a little bit of Yupari in it, okay? The same thing with you. You know, the drawing or your painting that you're making will have a little bit of you. Or should we say a lot? I always put a lot of, you know, personality, of my own personality in my paintings without really thinking about it. But in any case, let's get back into this. So I blocked in where I wanted the chin to fit. The top of the hairline is going to be next, really. The trick is to know how much mineral spirits to use, okay? You really don't want too much. The idea here with the burnt umber and the mineral spirits is that it'll eventually fade or kind of seemingly dissipate into the air, which will leave kind of like an underpainting really quickly for us to work on top of when we get into color. Alright, so now let's go ahead and put in our first little indications here, very lightly. The axes of the eyes, so that's most likely for the eyebrows, for the eyes over here. Now the face is turned in 3/4 relative to us. So I guess, there we go, the bottom of the nose is going to go here. Bottom of the mouth somewhere over here. Just going to use a simple line for that. Now we're going to move to the concavity of the eye sockets. So one little shape here. Okay, another shape over here. I also feel like there's quite a bit of personality to this portrait. What I remember reading about this painting, I believe this is the artist's sister that he painted. So that should tell us kind of that there is, you know, a lot of care taken with the shapes, with the painting in general. So right now I'm just squinting my eyes, okay, just trying to get an idea of what these shapes look like in their most basic form. I love this, like a shadow that just a simple little, I don't know, like trapezoid looking shape. Simple little shape there. Now for the mouth, let's look at the bottom or where the chin is going to fit. Over here, and the back side of the mouth. Don't need much more than that for now. Okay. Now we're just sketching in a little tone there for the shadow. Okay. Alright, so now a little more burnt umber. Gonna put in some simple little darks here. Dark accents for the iris on one side, now on the other. Very simple there. Maybe a little darker here. The concavity of the eye socket. Now, since we're using the Google Arts, site, I'm assuming that this picture should be probably one of the best documentations of this painting. So now with another brush with a little bit of odorless mineral spirits, I'm going to draw in this shape here for the glabella. A little bit of a curve here. No need for any details just yet. Now we're subtracting a little bit here for the upper eyelid, though it's okay if it's not perfect. It's okay if it's not perfect. Alright, so I think that the whole eye, after putting in the the top plane for the upper eyelid. I feel like the entire eye needs to move to the left. I'm going to sit back. Okay. I'll push that back a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to get a different brush. A little bit of odorless mineral spirits and the burnt umber. I'm just going to sketch in the dark for the hair. A little more burnt umber. I'm going to try to cover as much of the darks as possible. So not too much odorless mineral spirits, but just enough to get the paint to flow. I'm sitting back, so I'm thinking of the abstract quality of this painting. So a little more odorless mineral spirits. So now I'm going to cover even the dark back here. And it's okay if we lose some of the, like the boundaries for the hair or something like that. Right now I just want the darker tone for the background. And as I said before, this is going to fade, leaving us a nice ground to work over. And again, this is kind of a learning experience for me too, because I to be honest, and kind of ashamed of it, but I never heard of this artist, and if I have, I didn't remember. And I'd be curious to see more of his artwork. But again, the execution of this painting, the original one, has so much to teach us, so much to teach me. And I don't know, just there's a lot of beauty in this pattern of dark, like flowing through here, down here, and over here. Just in terms of the composition. Alright, so now that we got those darks, I think I'm going to just put a little more dark for the shadow. And again, it'll fade as we make this more and more precise. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a smaller brush, again with the odorless mineral spirits. I'm really going to try to, not drop my brush. Try to look at the distance between the eyes. Tear duct here, over here. So this is another dry brush. And I'm very focused on the main triangle. The main triangle is the two eyes and the nose. And then I'll kind of make everything around it more and more specific. But you want to pick a point or an area in which you start to really draw. Kind of almost makes me think of the turn of this portrait almost makes me think of like a Leonardo da Vinci. Why? I don't know. It's just a random thought in my head. Alright. So again, just taking my time. And I'm not moving as fast as I did on Wednesday. If you recall, Wednesday I was working without an air conditioner. And it's like summer where I'm at. So now that I have the air conditioner, I've kind of slowed down again. Just taking my time with these shapes. Gonna need a smaller brush to erase over here. Now I'm going to look very carefully at the angle between the eyes, okay? If you're drawing or painting along with me, watch out for this angle. So it is a little bit like this, okay, but very slight. All of these angles here are very slight. So, I'm going to want to subtract again up here. I'm going to need a little more odorless mineral spirits over here. Really dark over here. Okay, so now moving on down to the nose. I'm going to pay attention to these outer shapes. So for instance over here, goes up, then down. I use a vertical. Now to relate from the tear duct, go straight down. Alright, so now I'm going to sit back again. Okay, so every time I sit back or stand back, if you're drawing or painting along with me, try to sit back or stand back with me, okay? Now very cautiously following along these shapes. The more accurate I can make the light and shadow shapes, the more powerful the likeness I will get. Or the more like the actual model the painting will look. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the cheekbone. That curves in a little bit more. And this is already starting to fade a little bit, that darker tone. So I'm going to go over it again with the same brush, just to push that shape in a little bit. Now back to the other eraser brush. Very carefully looking at these shapes. Now, since I did put a link to the actual photo reference, hopefully that doesn't get me demonetized, but so I have a link to the actual photo reference that I'm using. So hopefully you will paint along with me. Paint or draw along with me, knowing you have the exact same picture. I have a feeling you may move faster than me. Definitely taking my time here. Now, if I seemed a little nervous in the beginning, it's because I kind of was. You know, before this, if you notice, it looks like these paints were, you know, like I was already mixing paint up here. I did start another painting before this with a different camera setup, but it completely failed. So this is my second attempt. So if you make a lot of mistakes when you're painting or working at home, just know that I make plenty of mistakes too. I get nervous too, okay? It's a natural thing. So don't think that anything's wrong with you just because painting makes you nervous sometimes. Happens to all of us. And this stage, okay, the you know, trying to get the simple shapes of light and dark, is almost a meditative state, really, to be in. You know, in that you're almost like talking to the shapes. You can really reason with the shapes. And this is really the heart of drawing, I think, with paint. Gonna get another dry brush to push these shapes around. And what I mean by the heart of drawing with paint is this is really as close as it's going to get to a drawing media like charcoal. This handles much more close to like a Fusane charcoal or Vine charcoal. And of course the camera did shut off, which kind of concerns me, like it did the one time I lost so much footage. So I'm going to try and keep an eye on this camera. But in any case, I just started to block in the top middle portion of the upper lip, the middle portion of the lower lip. So now we're just looking at these very delicate shapes here. I really hope I didn't lose any footage, but I guess I won't know until I'm editing this. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we get all of the footage. A little more mineral spirits. And like I said before, I'm really trying to make these videos much more of a paint along or paint with me kind of thing. Okay, so sometimes I'll get quiet, or sometimes I'll mess up my English or say something silly. But the idea here is to provide you with painting footage that you can actually draw or paint along with. So the videos are intended to be long enough for you to also create an artwork, or a work of art. See, there goes my English. A work of art as you're watching this. And it's a pretty good learning experience to do these master studies. One thing I've learned really is to slow down with the drawing. Really, really take your time with the drawing. That's what I'm doing here. You have very few things to work with. 1, 2, 3, 4, basically. And the power of the burnt umber drawing, I think, is another thing that I've really learned to utilize recently. Okay, so now let's work our way down towards the chin. This shape here might have to turn in a little bit more. Okay. A little more mineral spirits. Alright, so we're going to get the eraser brush again. Subtract this shape here. We really want this umber drawing to be as precise as possible. Now a little darker here with just the burnt umber for the hair, the back side of the ear over here. Now I will layer right over top of this later on, but I'm painting it this color in particular, okay, knowing that the burnt umber is going to influence the colors that I put for the the darker tones of the hair. But as you notice, I left these areas pretty much alone because this is where we're going to go over with the flesh tones later on. A little bit of a darker accent here. This goes up here. Gonna have to refill the burnt umber later on, but that's okay. Alright, so now we're going to revisit the chin again. We're going to look at this shadow shape. See, I think this needs to angle up a little bit more. Angling this up. So I'm trying to relate the angle of the jaw, the mandible. I'm trying to relate this angle to basically the axes of the features, okay? But I think we're almost there with the umber drawing. I think that ear goes a little higher up. Say to about there. There's a little bit of glare from my point of view. So I'm going to try to minimize the glare here by moving the brush strokes in this direction. Which doesn't seem to help too much, but I guess a little bit. Alright, so now that I have the umber drawing, I have the umber drawing as well established as I possibly could get it. I'm going to go take a lunch break, so hopefully when I come back, at least these areas around here should kind of fade as the mineral spirits kind of just evaporates, and then the surface will be ready to continue with color. Alright, I'm back, and like I said, the AC is working. But the AC is working a little too well, so I actually have a hoodie on. But anyway, I think the paint has kind of faded a little bit, which is what I wanted it to do. But in any case, we're going to spend a lot of the time in this area. So how about we get into the flesh tone mixtures. So with the flake white, I don't think I introduced this color yet. This is a new one, at least to my palette. It is a nickel yellow. So nickel yellow, it's a form of, I think the name of the color is PY 53. I don't know. Anyway, it's a color that is very similar to lead tin yellow. Lead tin yellow is a historic color, an old master color. And I was on the search for that for a while, so we have this one here. So the nickel yellow. So in any case, so what I'm trying to do is mix up a pretty bright color. And so repeat after me. No medium, okay? I'm not using any medium. So if you're painting along with me, you do not want any medium for the first, for the first brush stroke of color, none. And pretty much for the majority of the painting, you're not really going to want too much medium. So I tend to go for the brightest of the bright first. And I tend to gauge my values around the light. So now we're going to go down in value a little bit. So a little bit of the burnt umber titanium white, cadmium red medium, yellow ochre. Trying to have the paint be as thick as possible. And one thing I'll say, I feel like the paint kind of slips a little bit on the glass palette as opposed to the wooden palette. I was just painting, working on a larger studio painting earlier, and I'm just like, well, something feels different here, and it's just the glass. A little bit lighter over here. A little more burnt umber, sap green, cadmium red, yellow ochre. Might be a little too cold, so a little more cadmium red, yellow ochre. A little bit more red, titanium white, flake white. Gonna have to recharge the flake white again. So now a little bit of middle tone value, flake white. So we want this to be darker, a little bit more red. Okay, so I'm gonna very quickly here recharge the flake white while the camera's still rolling, so I can move a little faster here. So I know today's episode's probably gonna take me a little bit longer. So now we're moving down the value range. So I want something that's kind of a darker pink. Lots of paint, okay? And another thing I like about the nickel yellow, the one that's basically supposed to be similar to lead tin yellow, is that's a very it's kind of a cool yellow, but it's not so saturated. It's kind of like a neutral, cool yellow, and it's very opaque, which is something I like. The opacity of the color is very useful. A little more titanium white, flake white. So now we got a lot of texture. I want to increase the thickness of the paint, especially in the lights. I like the kind of old world feel that this painting has as well, the original. A little more titanium white. And the nickel yellow. So now with a darker brush, kind of in the middle tone region, just a little bit warmer. There we go. And I'm working these large shapes surrounding the features. A little bit warmer here. So a little bit darker and more pink down here. Probably a little too pink. So some of the flake white. A little more titanium white. Really trying to get thickness of the paint here. Lighter and more pink over here. Then it's going to get a little darker, but still pink over here. I remember this is a learning exercise, okay? And the end result is a painting. But what we don't want is to try to create a perfect photographic rendition of this painting. You know, if my focus was to try to recreate the painting that you're seeing there for the photo reference, if that was my purpose, then I would just use the same picture and print it onto the canvas. You know, it's not what I'm after with this painting at all. I'm trying to learn something from it, you know, from this experience. So a little more titanium white. So I don't want to confuse anyone. You know, I don't want to tell you I'm trying to create a, you know, a master copy, like a perfect copy, or that my intention is to copy the painting. It's not. And I think there's a lot we can learn from this, from observing what masters have done in the past. And I think we're going to discover a lot of very interesting, you know, painters that we may have not even heard of before, such as Solomon, the artist that painted this. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to do much more research on this artist, but I mean, what caught me was the painting. You know, regardless of, you know, how famous the painter was or whatever, that means nothing really. You know, what matters is the work. Yeah, I think this painting is pretty much on par with any John Singer Sargent, you know, in my opinion. The skill is there, the execution is there. So a little bit darker down here. And again, this is something you see a lot in classical paintings. You know, I wouldn't have noticed it as much before, but you know, the attention to the warmth around the cheeks, right around here. So a little more alizarin permanent. And again, no medium, okay? None. Absolutely no medium. So we're going to cool down this flesh tone a little bit to sap green. There's something very quiet about this painting that I in particular really enjoy about it. And I don't really know how to, you know, clarify what I mean by quiet. It's just that, I don't know, I feel like I can read a little bit of Solomon's personality. You know, he might have been, you know, a little bit more of a recluse like me. You know, someone who prefers to stay and work in the studio as to go out and, you know, I'd rather be in the studio with as little distraction as possible while I'm working. And maybe he was like that too, I don't know. That's kind of the feeling I get from this painting, at least. I mean, I could be completely wrong. So a little more yellow. A very healthy amount of flake white. Gonna put in this light here. So when I lift the brush up like this, it's because I'm trying to kind of cake as much paint on the surface as possible. Especially in the more high lit regions, I feel like the paintings are usually much thicker there. And that's something I've been noticing with a lot of painters. You know, Rembrandt, Velasquez, Sargent, you name it. Alright, so now another thing that I've noticed with a lot of artists is the edge surrounding the eyebrows are usually very, very nice and soft. And there's no exception here. See how soft this edge is? There's something to be said about that. It's a reoccurring theme that I've seen with a lot of these painters. It's the softness around the eyebrows. So we're going to make it a little warmer, so the cadmium red, yellow ochre, a little more of the nickel yellow. Okay. So with this same value, we're going to return to this shape here. Try to raise the value a little more. Paint it a little more thick. Now a little bit of a greenish halftone over here. A greener and a little bit darker, but still fairly light. Whoops, lighter than that. There we go. And notice still not really much attention paid to the features, okay? Now I'm going to return to the darker brush, make it a little cooler. It's a little more sap green. So it's cooler, but not that much cooler. Okay, so now we want this little half tone. Pretty soon we're going to want to get a brush for the shadows. A little lighter and cooler all across here. Probably needs to be a little darker than that. There. Alright, so now with a different brush, if I can find, where's my brush? Okay. Titanium white, again no medium, tiniest bit of ultramarine blue. putting in the light for the collar. There we go. And just let this go right into the, whoops, let this go right into the flesh tone. And then we're going to go over that again. Okay, so this is a little painterly trick. Now we're just going to go right over it. There. Whoops. I'm going to have to do that over. Let me first make sure I know what shape I want. Looking at the angle. Okay, try that again. See how forgiving the oil paint is? Alright, so I think I just needed a little sharper. There. That's the angle I wanted. So a little bit lighter again. Up here. And now the tone directly above it, it's a little cooler, which is another thing I've noticed with a lot of these paintings. Is that the darker tone underneath of the lips usually appears a little bit more greenish. Like that. Very cautious with the values surrounding it though. If I make it too dark, it's going to look like she has a goatee, which we know she doesn't. So gotta be cautious with these values. Alright, so now with a different brush, a smaller one, a little bit of the cadmium red, flake white into the middle tone region of the palette. Just going to start to get a little dark shape for the lips. We're going to raise the value a little bit. We'll mix off to the side here. A little darker, more red. Right here. A little bit of ultramarine blue, just to make the red darker. Okay. A little bit more cadmium red. Same brush. Yellow ochre. The yellow. I feel like nickel yellow is just too many syllables. So if it's alright with you, I'm going to call this light yellow, not to be confused with a color that's actually light yellow. Just know that light yellow for me means the nickel yellow. Just too many syllables. Okay, so now what I think I'm going to do is with another brush, going to put in some of the darker values. So you see how I'm maintaining the color value web, okay? Gets darker down here, lighter up there, and then all of the hues are existing in between. A little bit of ultramarine blue, alizarin permanent, now, of course, what we need next is a color for the sclera. So I'm going to get that smaller brush, this one that I was using for the outlines, clean it off to the side with the odorless mineral spirits. So for the sclera, I usually just do black and white and some flesh tone. Black and white and some flesh tone, and that's it. And over here. And why not put in this little light shape here that we're seeing. Alright, now the camera is much closer to the painting. Just keep in mind that it is at an angle, so there will be a little bit of distortion. But it just kind of has to be that way, or else I won't be able to, paint properly. So now we're getting into the smaller shapes, okay? So I'm probably going to be very quiet, especially in this part of the painting. Just because it takes me much more focus when I'm in the smaller shapes. And if the painting starts to shake or something, like it probably is there, it's just because I'm mixing. So a little bit darker, cooler, but not that cold. So I switched to synthetics, okay? And that's just because I don't have any bristles that are this size, but it's okay. I think I would probably prefer to use synthetics anyway at this point, just because we're going to be looking at a lot of soft edges. And still no medium, okay? None. So it's going to be darker and a little bit more red across here. So now we're actually going to start putting in some darker values for the shadow. But I'm doing so selectively in these areas just because I'm starting to put in much more focus on these shapes. So I really want this edge to read properly, but in order to do so I kind of have to put a intermediate value. But applying the brush strokes in this direction, at least for me, kind of creates a little bit of a glare, so I have to be careful not to put too much paint in this little transitioning area. Gonna try to reduce the glare over here and soften a little bit. So darker and a little more alizarin crimson permanent. Now this whole area is very soft and very deceptive. It looks really simple, but yeah, trying to get these values to read just right is no simple task. So just using the synthetic brush, clean and dry synthetic, well, I guess relatively clean and dry, to soften. Now I'm going to use the smaller synthetic brush that I was drawing with before to kind of throw in a little more burnt umber in here. It was a little too red before. Okay, I'm going to do the same kind of thing over here, kind of working back and forth. Gonna sit back. Okay. So remember, every time I sit back or stand back, make sure to sit back or stand back with me, okay? So a little more of the sclera color. I'm sorry that I'm shaking this. It's gonna get a little darker. So now we're going to put in a little bit of light on the upper eyelid here. and all throughout here. Looks like he even painted this with just a single brush stroke. It's amazing. That area there. Very difficult though. Some more flake white. Colors from the middle tone region of the palette. One more light over here. Top area of the zygomatic bone. So a little bit darker. Now we're going to put in some shapes for the nose. All throughout here. I love the subtlety on the bulb of the nose that he painted. It looks a little more in the yellow ochre family, so that's what value I'm trying to mix up, value and color. Yes, this is definitely the work of someone very, very skilled. I'm so ashamed that I didn't know who he was until I just randomly saw this image on the Google Arts page. Well, since this part of the painting is very, quiet, since I'm not talking much, I think it's time to insert our secret saying. How about that? As I put in this little side plane over here. Whoops, just made it too dark. Let's make today's, let's make this secret saying more simple. So, you ready? Secret saying. Secret saying is, I paint portraits. So hashtag I paint portraits. So go ahead, comment down, hashtag I paint portraits. And I'll be there with my little emoji with the sunglasses and the thumbs up to respond to you. The highlight here, look at the subtlety of this. It's beautiful. Alright, so it's going to be a little lighter and brighter along here. Definitely getting into the more subtle things here, as I'm trying not to sneeze. Oh, that moment when you're painting and you have to sneeze. that could be more descriptive. So let's put in another little dark shape here. Now for the lips, what am I gonna do? Switch to a lighter value, a little more of the light yellow, aka the nickel yellow. More light right up here. There's a philtrum. Now we're gonna switch to the darker brush. A little bit cooler, dark flesh tone all throughout here. And I gotta say, I think that the texture of oil paint, you know, when you're working without any medium, when you're using as much just thick paint as possible, I think it looks much more professional. I think that is, it looks more like a you know, painting you'd see in a museum, like an 18th century, 19th century. Maybe I should just say 17th, 18th, 16th. Yeah, that kind of time period. That being said, I think I've already asked this before, but what is your favorite time period in the history of art? I kind of like the 17th century. A little lighter over here. I'm trying to talk a little bit less because this is a very delicate area. I always tend to gravitate towards this area and label this area in most portraits as the more difficult. There's just so much going on here. Let me show you what I mean. Light, right, gets darker, turns in this way, but then it gets lighter out here, but then all of a sudden it gets darker over here, and then it gets slightly darker here, but not as dark as here, and then we approach the chin. It's not a very easy area of any portrait, really. Okay, so I'm going to have to put in a darker value for the cast shadow here. Cast shadow is a shadow that has been casted. So again, this is a shadow being casted by the nose. There we go. I think it's a little darker and more red, so a little more burnt umber and alizarin permanent. There we go. And a little bit of a lighter red. Up here. And I think that after sitting back, so I just sat back a little bit. So remember, whenever I sit back or stand back, it's an open invitation for you to sit back or stand back with me. So I think the eyes can be a little more round, I think. So I want the edge around the eyebrow, see, getting confused. The edge around the upper eyelid here to be a little softer. Let's return this highlight back. So much subtlety around here. This might be the most quiet, I think, of all of my videos. I think. I wonder if it's going to be the longest. I don't know. But as I promised when I switched to the 2-day-a-week schedule, I'm going to be giving you much more footage. And I think that these master studies are really, really useful in terms of our learning together, because you will be there drawing and painting with me. Now we need much more subtlety there for the nose. So I'm thinking of the value first. A little lighter than that. If there's one thing that I've learned so far with this painting, is the subtlety between these edges. It's incredible how soft yet descriptive these edges are. I'm just trying to bring more light into this plane here. I'm pretty certain that my colors aren't that, you know, true to the photo reference. But what I'm trying to do is just prioritize the value at this point. And the edge, I mean, look at this edge. I think I need to add a little more light over here. Very, very subtle. I mean, the change in value from here to here, it's there, but it's so nondescript. Like, it's so difficult to see. You wouldn't notice it if you didn't think about the, you know, the form. I'm thinking about how the form is moving up over here, turning down, turning in the mouth, and then turning out. Alright, so talking about edge, we're going to have a much more subtle transition here. Almost a non-existent value transition. So subtle. There we go. See, that's how we're getting that magic. Or at least is what I think of it as. Magic. And then you go and mess it up. So I put a little bit of a darker value that it didn't need there. Getting ahead of myself. Alright, so now we're going to revisit this transitioning value. No medium. What is that? It's a bristle. Whoops. I think the lips are a little bit more full, I think. Sorry, I'm shaking it again. So a little bit more body, I think, to the lips. Still with that really, really soft edge. Having a lot of trouble just trying to keep up with these edges. So titanium white, cadmium red, yet again. Very soft little highlights here. That's also going to exist up here. the top plane of the upper lip. And so my camera did what it does best. It stopped recording. So hopefully you at least saw, as we were working the subtlety around the mouth. But again, I won't really know until it comes down to editing. And then when I am editing, there's really nothing I can do. So I'm sorry for whatever footage I have just lost. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm just softening these shapes around here. Alright, so now I'm going to making a decision here in my mind whether I should. Yep. I'm going to put in some more of a value here for the shadow. Just burnt umber into this region of the palette. No medium at all. Still none. So alizarin permanent, cadmium red, a little more burnt umber, a little more warm. I'd say that's way too hot. So I'm going to use sap green to cool down the heat. It's just a tiny bit warmer there. Not much more. Now we're going to have to sandwich that value in between the dark of the hair. So we're going to put the dark of the hair really quickly. And I think the less medium you use, the more rich the colors appear and the values. I think you can get a much darker value with just using without any medium, to be honest. I mean, look how dark this looks on the palette, and it's just the color, just the ivory black. Alright, so now that we have this dark shape here, I'm gonna draw with this color a little bit. And of course it's glaring. Alright, so back to the shadow tone. So it's going to be darker and a little bit warmer. Right under here. While we have this edge, let's go ahead and figure out the dark light. So this tone right here. So remember, the dark light is the value. It's the halftone just as light transitions into shadow, and it's one of the most descriptive halftones, if not the most descriptive one, of the curvature of the form. Alright, now we're going to soften it. I'm just relying on the softness of the brush. We already mixed up the values that we needed. It's just the edge now. Trying to get this edge. It's a very complicated edge. This area here is probably as difficult as portrait painting is going to get. I think I'm going to use a bigger brush for the collar. Burnt umber, ivory black. Pushing that shape up a little bit. So there's a little bit of light over here for the collar. We're just going to go ahead and put that in. Just a little brush stroke for that. A little bit of yellow ochre, burnt umber for this little flower shape. And we're going to use the nickel yellow. Not much needed there. Alright, so now returning to the shadow. It's going to get actually a little bit more green, I think it appears to me, at least over here. More sap green. Interesting choice for a flesh tone here. It actually works pretty nicely. For some reason this is relating very nicely to this on the actual painting. So I'm going to bounce between here and here. So a little more red, cadmium red medium, yellow ochre. So we paint in these tones. Now we're going to soften again. Going to soften over here as well. This kind of reminds me of the Velasquez that we did last week. Just in the subtlety of the edge quality. It's very impressive. Alright, so now for the background, it looks a little bit greenish to me. So with this same brush, actually first let me get the dark accents for the hair. Ivory black and the alizarin permanent. A few little marks here for the dark of the hair. I did say I would utilize the burnt umber here. So I'm using the burnt umber as kind of a halftone for the hair. So even the hair has planes. Top plane, side plane, and then under planes. Alright, so the reason I did that first was because I'm going to be painting all around it now. So with the same brush, we are going to need a little more sap green. So forgive me for just putting more paint like kind of on the spot. A little more sap green there. Pretty much going to use all of it. So sap green, yellow ochre. Let's just try that. A little more yellow ochre, burnt umber, flake white. It looks like this artist also used a kind of warm tone underneath. I can kind of see that. And again, something really just stood out to me when I saw this painting. I don't know, something about the greenish around here, and then the way that the darks frame the portrait to the turn that the model is making. It's so very alive, yet very, very quiet. Now I'm just trying to soften the edge over here around. Alright, so while I'm filling in the background, I'm going to talk about you know, the idea of these master studies and how I think it'll really help us. I really think that this is a very, you know, a valid way to learn painting. You know, you don't have to pay the thousands and thousands of dollars to go to a formal art school. You know, there's so much out here available for us, especially on you know, like Google Arts, what I used for this photo reference, which again I'm hoping I don't get demonetized for. But I think it gets us to really spend more time observing you know, works of art from the past. You know, it's one thing to really, you know, it's one thing to walk around a museum or look at an online gallery of a painting, or to see a painting in an online gallery or whatever. It's one thing to observe it, but it's another thing to really, really look at it. And that's what these studies make us do. They force us to really, really take a closer look at these paintings. You know, you can really get a lot out of it, you know. And take it from me, because I think that this is the one tool above pretty much almost anything really that has really gotten me to break out of my comfort zones. You know, the idea of trying to, you know, recreate something as masterful as like a Velázquez, a Sargent, and even this one, the Solomon Joseph Solomon, I think that was his name. Oh man, I probably just got it wrong. But you know, I think that's another really nice thing about this, these master studies that we're going to be doing, is to also discover other artists. I've had a lot of requests for Vermeer, the pearl earring, in the past, you know, like last year and stuff. I haven't really gotten to the pearl earring just yet, just because, I mean, to be honest, I think that the most ridicule I'm going to get is going to be from the pearl earring, just because I really don't want to do a perfect copy of any of these paintings, you know, when I'm doing a master study. And I just think that the internet won't really accept it, I think. And I'm just giving you the honest truth, you know. I just don't think that I don't know. I just feel like I'll get a lot of heat for that. You know, if the pearl earring isn't perfectly a copy of the pearl earring. I don't know. I'm not saying I won't get to it, but kind of holding back on that one. Anyway, enough of my little side story. I just tell you little side stories as I'm filling in the background, just because the background is kind of a much more kind of mundane thing. Doesn't always have to be that way, but yeah. Anyway, so I'm just softening the edge around here. Gonna soften over here. And you know, the look of the antiquity of this, you know, more old world look that these paintings have, I think it's really something that I enjoy more than a kind of like photographic look. You know, when I see paintings today, you know, I can tell, you know, the idea of a photo reference or trying to mimic the photograph or whatever. I think that that's just something that's just too, I don't know, it's not in my taste, and I think it's just too prevalent these days. And I just want paintings that look much more like naturalistic, what it's like to really observe through human eyes. That's what I get out of a lot of Rembrandts, you know, a lot of Velasquez, Sargent. Softer over there. You know, even the hair, you know, this soft edge over here is quite beautiful. Alright, so more burnt umber. Ivory black. Ultramarine blue. Just to get a darker tone. Thinking of this angle here. I might have too much of the shoulder showing here. I think that's okay. It's okay. Burnt umber, ultramarine blue. It brings me back a memory as I'm filling in this, you know, this darker tone. When I was first getting into art school, you know, right out of high school, I mean, I won't go into too much of a story of that, but one of my friends, I went to the school called Micah for like 2 semesters, and one of my friends that I met there, who I haven't really kept in touch with, but I would like to talk to my buddies from before. My buddy Maniel, his name is Maniel. He was the first one that taught me how to mix the color black using these two, right? Ultramarine blue and burnt umber. So if for some reason you're watching, Maniel, thanks for that tip. Okay. So I think I might have too much showing for the shoulders, but you know, for some reason that doesn't bother me too much. But I am going to try to make it look a little closer to the original. So a little lighter. Whoops, whoops. Sap green, burnt umber. There. Alright, so now we're just down to the final touches. So a little bit of sap green into this area here, maybe a little bit lighter. I just want to get a more concise edge over here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is get a synthetic brush again, clean and dry synthetic, soften a few little areas here. I just want to soften that edge, and then this edge over here. Very, very minimal pressure, almost no pressure. As Bob Ross would say, a few hairs and some air. That's all we need now. And remember, the idea is it was never to make a perfect replica of this painting. It's to create a master study. So I know I did lose some of the footage, due to my camera shutting off. I mean, I can't really check on the camera all the time while I'm painting, so I apologize for that. But you did get most of the footage, so if you did draw or paint along with me, feel free to share your artwork with us. You can share through my Instagram. You can just tag me or something. Or you can share on the Facebook page, the Yupari Artist Facebook page. These are the last little touches here, though. And maybe soften over here. Alright, I think that ought to be pretty good. Well, should I say almost pretty good. Just a little more softening. I guess while I'm doing this, I'm going to move the camera. I mean, that should be pretty much almost the last touch. So don't worry, the camera shake will stop. Alright, camera movement should stop right about there. Okay, so just continue softening this edge here. Alright, I'm going to stand back again. Standing back again. Standing back. That's one thing I tend to do a lot. If you've ever painted with me, I tend to move a lot, especially when I'm about to, finish painting. I tend to stand back quite a bit. Okay. All right. I think that's pretty good. Of course, I keep saying that, and then I keep making some marks. But okay, gotta know when to let it be. That being said, remember that this painting is going to be on sale at 40% off. Now that is going to be 40% off at the price that these paintings usually are at the 11 by 14 inch size. I will wait for it to dry before signing it, and then signing that it's after a master study of the artist that painted the original painting. Okay, so 48 hours from the time that this video was uploaded, it will be 40% off at my website. My website will redirect you to the Etsy page where you will be able to make the safe transaction. And that's all thanks to Lucy, of course, for making the website possible and facilitating those transactions. That being said, I truly do hope that today's episode helps you out. I wish you the best in all of your artwork. If you would like to support this channel even more, I have a Patreon account where you can support me there directly, and you will also have extra things such as live chats, so texting or talking to me in real time. We will also have live streams and critiques and plenty more, along with shout outs, which I'm going to give a new shout out to our new patron at the end of this episode. Always remember, in a world that can be so negative, be the spark that ignites positivity among all of us. I truly hope that today's episode helps you out. Again, I wish you the best in all of your artwork, and I'll see you on Wednesday. And it's now time for our new patron shout out. So thank you so much, Shaya Golan, for becoming a patron on my Patreon account. Thank you so much. Your contribution helps me out tremendously. I am eternally grateful for your help. Thank you so much for helping to support these videos. I wish you the best in all of your artwork, and I'll see you again on Wednesday.